Her phone buzzed, revealing a message from an unknown number saying, "That is one beautiful dress. We should talk about your future. You have options you haven't considered." From Choi Sang-woo, and she showed it to Mingju without a word. His expression went flat. "They think you're ambitious enough to flip, so they're recruiting you. Are they wrong?" She didn't mean it, not really, but wanted to see his reaction. "I don't know anymore," he said quietly. 6 hours ago I knew exactly who you were. Now I'm realizing I might never have known at all." "I'm the same person I've always been," Judith replied. "You just preferred me to be invisible." Another message arrived. Then another. Different numbers, different organizations, all essentially the same. "We see you. We value you, and we can offer you things he can't." The dress had made her visible. That visibility had made her valuable, and Veen value, in their world, was the most dangerous currency of all. The fashion boutique opened 6 weeks later in Gangnam, surrounded with glass walls and minimalist aesthetic. Judith stood at the entrance wearing a redesigned version of the dress. Same pattern, but different cut, this one calculated to photograph well, and watched reporters cluster hungrily around the velvet rope. She'd learned to smile for cameras. Learned which angles made her look confident instead of terrified, and learned how to speak in sound bites that revealed nothing while promising everything. "Miss Judith, tell us about your inspiration. Can you confirm your relationship with? Is it true your grandmother designed?" Seo-rin appeared at her elbow, immaculate in navy, steering her away from questions that got too close to truth. "Miss Judith has another appointment. Thank you all for coming." She forced a smile before closing the door. Inside, away from the cameras, Judith let the smile drop. The boutique was real now, with actual inventory, actual employees, and actual sales. The lie had grown flesh and started breathing. She'd designed 12 pieces in 6 weeks, working with artisans who didn't ask questions when Seo-rin paid them in cash. Some of the designs were good, some were terrible, but all of them sold within hours of being listed online. Fame was easier to manufacture than she'd expected. "You're trending again," Seo-rin said, checking her phone. "The green dress from yesterday's preview is already being called iconic, and fashion blogs are comparing you to—" "I don't care." Judith moved toward the back office, clicking her heels against polished concrete. "Is he here?" "In the conference room with Aid." Seo-rin nodded once. That stopped Judith. "You said Aid was still locked down." "Minju released him this morning, against my advice." Seo-rin's expression suggested this was one of many recent decisions she disagreed with. "Things are a bit complicated," she added. "Things have been complicated since I wore a dress." Judith pushed through the door marked private, leaving the manufactured perfection of the boutique behind. The back offices were functional, windowless, and she found them in the conference room. Minju, Aid, and 3 men she didn't recognize, with a glacial amount of temperature in the room. Mingju looked up when she entered, and something in his expression made her stomach clench. He'd aged in 6 weeks, having new lines around his eyes and grey threadings through his temples that hadn't been there before. "Judith," he said carefully, "we need to talk." "About what?" But she knew, she could feel it in the way Aid wouldn't meet her eyes and the way the strangers assessed her. One of them stood, older and expensively suited. "Mrs. Choi, I'm Choi Sang-woo, and we've been corresponding," the man who'd messaged her. "I told you I wasn't interested," Judith said flatly. "You told me you'd consider all opportunities, which is why I'm here to present one that benefits everyone." He gestured to a chair. "Please, this concerns your future, your safety, and your cousin's life." That last part landed like a blade. Judith looked at Aid, really looked at him. He was thinner, scared, and one eye was swollen nearly shut with fresh injury, probably hours old. "What did you do?" she asked Minju. "What I had to." His voice carried no apology. "Your cousin leaked information that compromised organizational security. Of course there will be consequences for that." "You beat him." She leaned forward. "I watched as others beat him. The distinction seemed important to him. But he's alive, which is more than some people think he deserves." Some people meaning Park. Seo-rin had entered behind Judith, closing the door. "Park's been pushing for permanent solutions and arguing that Aid's betrayal warrants execution." "For sending photos?" Judith felt rage building in her chest. "For being stupid and scared? For creating a security breach that cost us leverage with 3 separate organizations, Minju corrected. The Choi family now has information about our protocols. They know our weaknesses and they're here because of him. Choi Sang-woo smiled. We're here because Mrs. Choi has become valuable. The photos simply clarified how valuable. Get to the point, Judith said. The point is simple. You're a liability to your husband's organization, through no fault of your own, but a liability nonetheless. Every day you remain visible, you invite complications, but you're also a popular and photogenic asset, with legitimate business interests that could prove useful to people with resources. You want to buy me? She said it flatly, letting the disgust show. I want to employ you, providing the protection you clearly need. Your husband's organization is strong, but it's stretched thin, keeping you safe. But we have resources he doesn't, the infrastructure he lacks, and we're willing to share them for a price. Which is, Judith raised a brow, information, access, small things, really. Details about shipments, schedules, and personnel movements. Nothing that would truly harm your husband's interests, just enough to ensure we stay well, competitive. Judith looked at Minju. You brought me here for this? To listen to him pitch recruitment? I brought you here because the alternative was worse. His hands were planted flat on the table. Park issued an ultimatum yesterday. Either we neutralize the AD problem permanently, or he walks, and takes 6 sector bosses with him. That's a third of our operational capacity, and if that happens, we'd become vulnerable. So you're trading my cousin's life for organizational stability? Judith spread a palm. I'm trying to find options that won't end with someone losing their life. He looked exhausted, and Choi's proposal gives us one. My proposal, Sang-woo clarified, saves your cousin, protects you, and provides your husband with breathing room. All it requires is occasional cooperation with small items. Nothing dramatic, really. Nothing except betrayal, Judith said. Is it betrayal to accept the protection you need? Sang-woo's voice pitched a bit higher. Your husband can't keep you safe. The last 6 weeks have proven that. You've had 3 credible death threats and 2 attempted kidnappings. Someone even planted a bomb in your first boutique location before you opened. You're living in a state of constant siege, and he's running out of resources to defend you. Judith's gaze swung to Minju. A bomb? You didn't tell me about any bomb. I handled it. His jaw was set. You don't need to know about every single threat. I don't need to. She stopped, taking a breath, forcing calm. You're doing that again, controlling information to protect me and making decisions about my life without including me. Because you made yourself a target. The control finally cracked. Minju stood, slamming his hands on the table. Because you wore that fucking dress and decided visibility mattered more than safety, and now I spend every waking moment calculating who wants to hurt you badly enough to try. Do you understand what that's like? Knowing that loving you makes you vulnerable? That every enemy I have sees you as the easiest way to destroy me? Then let me go, Judith said quietly. The room went silent. What? Minju stared at her. Let me go. Divorce me. Make it public. Make it ugly if you want. Blame me for the visibility, the complications, whatever you need. Cut me loose and let me survive on my own terms. You'd be dead within a week, So-rin said flatly. Without organizational protection, you're prey, and every outfit that wants leverage against Minju would grab you just to prove they could. So I'm trapped. Married to a man who sees me as a liability, protected by an organization that wants me invisible, offered salvation by people who want to use me as a spy. Judith let out a sharp and humorless laugh. These are my options? This is what visibility bought me? Visibility bought you fame, Sang-woo cut in, and I'm merely offering to convert that into power, real power. By betraying my husband, she chuckled. By protecting yourself. Your husband can't keep you safe. He's admitted as much, and your cousin will kick the bucket unless someone intervenes. I'm the one offering that intervention. Sang-woo pointed at his chest. Judith looked at Aide, still silent in his chair, with a swollen eye and trembling hands. What do you think? She asked him directly. Should I trade information to save your life? Aide's voice came out hoarse. I think I fucked up. I destroyed everything trying to protect you, and I think whatever happens next is my fault, so you shouldn't. He stopped, swallowing hard. Don't let me be the reason you betray him. I'm not worth that. But you're worth protecting, Judith muttered. I don't know anymore, he said, batting an eye shut. Judith turned back to Sang-woo. What information specifically? What would you want? Judith, don't, Min-ju warned. I'm asking a question. I deserve to know exactly what's being offered before I make a decision. She held Sang-woo's gaze. What do you want? Shipping schedules for the next 3 months. Personnel files for sector leadership and access codes to the warehouse district facilities. It's nothing that compromises active operations, just enough to let us plan around your husband's movements. That's everything, So-rin said. That's a complete operational blueprint. That's survival, Sang-woo corrected. Mrs. Choi provides information. We provide protection. Her cousin lives and everyone goes home with a smile. Except Min-ju, Judith said. Except organizational security, Sang-woo agreed. But isn't that always the trade? Individual safety versus collective vulnerability? Your husband made this choice when he married you, when he brought someone he loved into a world built on violence. Now you simply have to decide, do you prioritize his empire or your own life? Judith paused, looking at the cold floor, feeling the weight of every eye in the room. I need to think, she finally said. You have until tomorrow night, Sang-woo replied. After that, Park gets his way. Your cousin becomes a message about the cost of betrayal, and you'll have chosen organizational loyalty over family. He stood, buttoning his jacket. We'll be in touch, Mrs. Choi. I hope you make the choice that lets you sleep at night. He left, taking his associates with him, clicking the door shut with finality. In the silence that followed, Judith pulled out her phone, opened the secure folder containing a complete map of Min-ju's organization, which she'd been building for 6 weeks. Everything Sang-woo had asked for and more, as she'd been documenting it all since the dress. What is that? Min-ju asked quietly. Insurance. She set the phone on the table between them, facing the screen up, with visible files. I've been building it since I realized the organization saw me as leverage, because I needed something that made destroying me more expensive than tolerating me. So-rin picked up the phone, scrolling through, shifting her expression from surprise to something like admiration. This is comprehensive. How did you access? I paid attention and remembered things I wasn't supposed to hear. Judith looked at Min-ju. You thought controlling information would keep me safe, and I learned that gathering information would keep me alive. You've been spying on me. His voice came out flat. I've been documenting the world that sees me as property. She held his gaze. By collecting leverage against me, he calmly asked. By ensuring that if you ever decided I was more valuable dead than alive, I could prove otherwise. The admission hung between them. You married me, believing love could coexist with control, and I stayed believing information could coexist with trust. But we were both wrong. Min-ju reached for the phone, but So-rin held it back. This changes things, she said slowly. If she has this, if she's willing to use it. I'm not giving it to Sang-woo, Judith interrupted. I'm not betraying you to save aid, but I'm also not letting you sacrifice him to maintain an organizational face. So here's my counteroffer. She took the phone back, pulling up a specific file. This is documentation of every quiet trade this organization has made in the last 5 years in the invisible market you all pretend doesn't exist while participating in it constantly. Park's name appeared throughout the documentation, containing transfers he'd authorized, families he'd relocated, and women he'd traded. Park isn't threatening to leave because of aid, Judith continued. He's threatening to leave because I'm proof the system is breaking. Because if one wife can be visible and survive, it calls into question every trade he's ever made, every family he's relocated, and every woman he's convinced that invisibility equals safety. You want to expose Park, So-rin said, as the understanding crystallized. I want to expose the system and make it public. Not through Sang-woo, but through legitimate channels filled with people who'll ask why this organization treats families like commodities. Judith looked at Min-ju. You want to neutralize the A-Day problem? Fine. Make him the whistleblower. Park can't execute him without confirming everything he revealed, and the organization can't punish him without admitting he's telling the truth. That would destroy half our alliances, Min-ju said. Organizations that depend on that system would scramble to distance themselves from it, would claim they never participated and would compete to look cleanest. Sorin kept on nodding. It's chaos, but controlled chaos. We position ourselves as reformers, exposing the corruption in our organization. We will lose some allies, but in return we will gain moral high ground. There is no moral high ground in organized crime, Minju said. There's an operational advantage in appearing to have it, Judith countered. And there's safety in making Park the problem instead of me or Aid, instead of every wife who's ever questioned why invisibility is mandatory. Ade, with a shaky voice, spoke up. You want me to go public while exposing the organization? They'll kill me. They'll try, Judith agreed. But if you're a public figure, killing you becomes complicated. She looked at Minju. Isn't that what you said? Make someone expensive enough that touching them becomes impossible? I said that about you to keep you safe. And now I'm saying it about him, about all of us. She stood and rigidly moved to where her husband sat with anger and fear and something that might have been reluctant respect. You can't protect me by making me invisible. You can't save Adi by killing him. And you can't as well maintain this organization by pretending the system isn't broken. So we should instead burn the parts that need burning, exposing the rot, and we'll survive by being too visible to eliminate quietly. Park will retaliate, Sorin warned. Park will run, Judith corrected, because the documentation includes all his transactions and all his violations of organizational codes everyone pretends to follow. He didn't threaten us because he wanted to leave. He's been preparing to flee, so we just need to make sure he leaves behind evidence that protects us. Minju stayed silent for quite some time, studying her face. When did you become this? He slowly asked. When I realized love wasn't enough, and when I understood that you'd let me die before you'd let me be seen. When I chose visibility and learned it came with a price I needed leverage to afford. She touched his face, feeling him flinch. I'm still the woman you married. I just stopped pretending safety and erasure were the same thing. This could destroy everything I've built. His eyes slightly went wide. Or it could save what matters. She pulled up another file, holding Park's unauthorized dealings. He's already betrayed you. I'm just giving you evidence that turns his departure into our advantage. Sorin took the phone again, reviewing the files with professional efficiency. This works. This actually works. We feed it to investigators through Aid to expose Park and collapse the trading system. That'll give us the opportunity to emerge as the organization that cleaned house. And Sangwoo? Minju asked. Gets nothing, Judith said. Because I'm not a bargaining chip. I'm the woman who wore a dress and refused to disappear, and who learned that visibility without leverage equals death. So I built leverage. Don't get me wrong, I did not do it to betray you. I did it to make betraying me impossible. By threatening to expose everything? Minju asked once more. By making everything too tangled to expose cleanly. Looking closer, you'll see that destroying me means destroying half your alliances, your reputation, and your operational security. But by becoming too expensive to kill and too dangerous to control. She leaned closer, dropping her voice. You wanted to protect me by keeping me invisible. I protected myself by making visibility my weapon. The room went silent except for Ade's uneven breathing and the distant sound of cameras outside, filled with journalists still hoping for a statement. Minju stood finally, moving to the window, looking out at the boutique floor where Judith's designs hung against every rule he'd been raised to follow. If we do this, he said quietly, there's no going back. Park will burn everything trying to take us down, while other organizations will see us as unstable. We'll lose allies. We'll lose allies who traded families like assets, Judith corrected, and we'll keep the ones who value something beyond control. You're gambling with all of our lives. Minju averted his gaze. I'm gambling that being seen is safer than hiding. That information is power, and that the only way to survive your world is to change the rules. She joined him at the window. The dress was never the problem, Minju. The problem was a system that required my erasure. I just decided my existence mattered more than your comfort. He turned to face her, and she saw something more complicated, something that looked like acceptance of a truth he'd been avoiding. Then we will release everything tomorrow, he said. Ad goes to investigators, Park gets exposed and the trading system collapses. And me? Judith asked. You stay visible, dangerously and expensively visible. His hand found hers. And I will learn to live with the terror of loving someone who refuses to be hidden. That's all I ever wanted. She let out a genuine smile this time. I know. He pulled her closer, putting his forehead gently against hers. I just wish wanting it didn't mean risking everything. Everything was already at risk, Judith said. I just made sure the risk was mutual. The news broke at 6 a.m., timed for maximum impact across morning broadcasts and social media cycles. Judith watched from the penthouse as Seoul woke up to headlines that would reshape the underground economy. Her coffee had gone cold an hour ago, but she kept holding the cup, needing something to anchor her hands. Whistleblower exposes human trafficking network in Seoul's elite circles. Fashion designer's cousin reveals underground family trading system. Organized crime's hidden market, wives as bargaining chips. Addy's face was everywhere, haunted, determined, bruised but alive. He'd sat in front of cameras for 3 hours yesterday, detailing everything with a specificity that came from guilt and terror combined. So-rin had coached him, shaped the narrative, and made sure every word served their purpose, and now the story was already trending globally. Coffee's terrible when it's cold, Minju said from the doorway. His eyes looked a bit swollen from lack of sleep, and his suit was different from yesterday, which meant he'd gone somewhere and made decisions she might never know about. I wasn't drinking it for taste. Judith set the cup down and turned to face him. Is it working? Depends on your definition. He moved into the room as the exhaustion made him less guarded than usual. Parks disappeared completely, leaving behind half his operations and burned his own infrastructure on the way out. Authorities found evidence in places we didn't even know to look. He's running scared, she smirked. He's running smart. He knew we had documentation, so he's cutting losses and vanishing before anyone can connect him to the worst of it. Mingyu poured himself fresh coffee from the pot. 3 other organizations have already issued statements distancing themselves from the trading system, claiming they never participated, with no knowledge, and are deeply concerned about the revelations. Liars, she growled. Survivors. He took a long drink, staring out the same window she'd been watching. That's what we do in this world. Lie convincingly enough to outlast the truth. They'll restructure and rebrand, finding new ways to accomplish the same things while appearing reformed. Cynical. She muttered. No, it is realistic. He glanced at her. You knew this wouldn't actually stop the system. It could only expose one version of it. I knew it would make the system more expensive to maintain and make participants more visible while it creates consequences where there weren't any before, Judith added. That's not nothing. It's not salvation either, he said. I never promised salvation, just survival on better terms, she replied. His phone buzzed, the 5th time in as many minutes, but he ignored it, which told her more than checking it would have. When Minju ignored calls, it meant the problems were too big to handle immediately or too small to matter anymore. This time, she suspected the former. Sangwoo called, he finally said. Congratulated me on the bold move, saying that he respected the strategy. And what does he actually think? She folded her arms. That we've made ourselves unpredictable, and that unpredictability can be valuable or dangerous depending on how we use it. Minju's jaw tightened. He also mentioned he's still interested in working with you, independently. Of course he is. Judith felt tired suddenly, because I'm still visible and still a potential asset. You made yourself untouchable by making yourself indispensable. That was brilliant. He turned to face her fully. It was also terrifying, because now every organization in Seoul knows you're capable of that kind of strategic thinking. Isn't that what I wanted? She asked. Is it, though? The question from Minju held genuine curiosity, to be seen as dangerous instead of vulnerable, and to be valued for strategic use instead of protected from strategic targeting. Judith placed a finger under her chin. I only wanted to exist, she said quietly, but I'm still figuring out what that costs. The morning news then shifted to footage of her boutique. Crowds had gathered overnight. Some protesters angry about organized crime's infiltration of legitimate business, some supporters praising her designs, and most just curious about the woman at the center of Seoul's biggest scandal. Police had established barricades and even her employees couldn't get inside. That business is done for, Minju said, following her gaze. Do you understand that? It's now contaminated because it's associated with trafficking and crime. Nobody's buying dresses from a mafia wife who exposed underground networks. Maybe. Judith watched the crowds. Or maybe people buy them because of it, because the story is compelling, because visibility is currency and I'm the most visible woman in Seoul right now. That's dark, he muttered. That's honest. She pulled out her phone, which had been flooding in messages for hours. Some were threatening, some were supportive, and many others from journalists wanting interviews, brands wanting collaboration, and people wanting proximity to controversy. 3 separate production companies have asked about adapting my story, she continued. 2 publishers want a book and someone wants to make a documentary about the dress. You're not seriously considering... I'm considering everything, because visibility without leverage is vulnerability, but visibility with narrative control is power. She scrolled through offers. The dress made me memorable, and the exposure made me famous. Now I have to decide what that fame means. By selling your story? He raised a brow. By controlling it, and by making sure when people remember me, they remember what I choose to show them. Judith looked at him. Isn't that what you've always done? Controlled perception with managed narrative? The only difference is I'm doing it publicly instead of in the shadows. Mingju stayed quiet for a long time. Serin thinks you should disappear for a while, he broke the growing silence. Not to hide, but to travel and let Seoul cool down while you build business legitimately elsewhere. She's got contacts in Milan, New York, and Lagos, places where your heritage has an advantage. And leave you to handle the fallout? She blinked. I've been handling fallout my entire life. It's what I'm good at. He smiled without humor. You exposed a system that needed exposing. Now I get to rebuild one that's marginally less monstrous. That's the deal we made. That's not the deal we made. We agreed to survive together. Her voice rose higher. We agreed you'd be visible and I'd learn to live with the terror. Nowhere did we specify proximity. His hand found her face, brushing her cheekbone using a thumb. You could have a life separate from this. The boutique might be contaminated here, but your designs are good. Actually, it's very good. You could build something real. This is real. She looked right into his face as their eyes met. This is complicated. His voice lowered. Same thing. She leaned into his touch, feeling the warmth of his palm against her skin. I'm not leaving, Minju. I started all of these the moment I wore that dress. I will see it through. Seeing it through might mean watching me destroy what's left of organizational stability to protect what you exposed, he muttered, drawing her closer. Then I will watch. She pulled back enough to meet his eyes again. You don't get to protect me by sending me away. Not anymore. I chose visibility and I am ready to accept the consequences. His phone buzzed again and this time he checked it, darkening his expression. Park's been found dead. Authorities are calling it suicide, but the scene suggests otherwise. Judith's stomach dropped. Who? It could be anyone. He pocketed the phone. In our world, convenient deaths rarely get solved. You didn't? No. He held her gaze. I wanted him gone, but not like that. Dead men can never be useful. A pause. But someone decided he was more valuable as a warning than a witness. Warning about what? She furrowed her brow. About what happens when you expose systems and when you forget that some rules exist because breaking them gets people killed. He moved away from the window and from her, creating the distance that meant difficult truths were coming. Park's death ISA warning to everyone who might consider following your example. Adie's safe because he's public. You're safe because you're famous. But Park was neither, so he became the message. That's my fault. The realization settled heavy in her chest. That's the system's fault. Park built his career on trading families and treating people as assets. He died because that system needed a scapegoat, and he was convenient. Minju's voice stayed gentle but firm. Do not blame yourself, Judith. You just illuminated the structure that made him disposable. Semantics, she muttered. Survival. He returned to her, planting both hands on her shoulders. Park made choices that led here. So did I, and so did you. We all participated in something broken, and now it's breaking spectacularly. People will die, definitely, Organizations will collapse and new ones will form. That's how change happens in our world, violently and with collateral damage. I thought exposing it would make it better. Her voice softened. You thought visibility would protect you. It has, but protection and improvement aren't the same thing. He pulled her closer, and she let him, needing the contact even as her mind recoiled from the implications. The underground trading system will continue, but more carefully and with better security. You made it more sophisticated, and that's the best we get. The truth of it hurt worse than she'd expected. Her phone lit up, flashing aid calling ID, and she answered, putting it on speaker. Have you seen the news? Her cousin's voice sounded raw. Park's dead, and they're saying it's suicide, but nobody believes that. Judith, did I? You exposed the truth, Judith interrupted, and what people do with the truth isn't your responsibility. But if he died because I talked, he died because he participated in a system that consumes people. You just provided documentation. She made her voice steady even as her hands shook. Are you okay? So Rin has me in a hotel with security outside. She says I need to stay visible, to keep doing interviews, and to make myself valuable as a witness. A shaky breath came from the other end of the speaker. I never wanted any of this. I just wanted you safe. I know. She calmly replied, and she understood that Adie's betrayal came from love, twisted by fear, from desperation to protect her using the only tools he understood. Stay with Seo Rin. Do what she says and try to survive this. She said, and then what? When the interviews stop and people forget, when I'm just the guy who snitched and nobody's protecting me anymore. Minju leaned toward the phone. Then you work for me, legitimately. You're smart when you're not panicking, and you've proven you can handle pressure, so I'll find a place for you. You'd really do that, after everything? His voice shook hard. I'd do that because I love you, your family, and family gets chances. His expression suggested this was costing him. But you get one okay, just one. Betray that trust and Park's fate will look merciful by comparison. I understand, sis. Relief flooded Ade's voice. Thank you, both of you. I'll make this right somehow. He hung up, leaving them in silence. You didn't have to do that, Judith said quietly. I did it because I wanted you to stay. If I want this marriage to survive what we've done to it. Minju moved to the couch, finally sitting as exhaustion caught up. You chose visibility, and I choose you. That means absorbing the complications you bring, including cousins who make catastrophically bad decisions. She joined him, fitting herself against his side the way she used to before everything got complicated, and he wrapped an arm around her, holding tighter than ever. The boutique might recover, he said into her hair. Sorin thinks Scandal sells if we market it correctly using dark fashion, defiant design, and clothes for women who refuse to hide. It could work. Or it could fail spectacularly, she whispered. Most things do, but we'll try anyway. A genuine smile spread across his lips. Outside, the crowd at her boutique was growing. Judith could see the live news feed on her phone with reporters interviewing protesters and supporters, while everyone had different opinions about a woman they'd never met who'd worn a dress and started a war. She wasn't sorry. Wasn't sure she was proud either. Just exhausted, exhilarated and terrified in equal measure, which seemed about right for someone who'd chosen visibility in a world built on shadows. I'm not wearing beige anymore, she said finally, and whatever happens, whatever pressure comes, I'm not going back to being invisible. I know. His grip tightened. I'm just learning to live with what that means. Which is. She raised her head looking at his profile. That loving you is terrifying, and keeping you alive requires accepting I can't control you, and that the safest thing I could do is let you go, and I'm too selfish to do it. He kissed her temple. That you're dangerous and brilliant and so on, and those qualities will either save us or destroy everything. Romantic. She patted down on his hair. Honest. He pulled back to look at her. The dress didn't save you, Judith. It just made killing you expensive. Do you understand the difference? I understand that expensive is better than easy. Visible is better than forgotten. Existing costs something, and I'd rather pay the price than pretend I don't have one. She touched his face, feeling stubble rough against her palm. We're both paying now and both vulnerable in ways we weren't before. Mutual destruction, he whispered. Mutual survival. She smiled. Isn't that what marriage is supposed to be? His laugh was soft and sad. If so, we're doing it right. The dress hung in her closet and had become a symbol, as well as a declaration, because she wouldn't need to wear it publicly again. But now she existed, and Seoul would simply have to get used to remembering her name.